What happens when a nosy HOA Karen tows a truck she has no idea belongs to the county sheriff? She thought she had power, until the law showed up on her own front lawn. This isn't just neighborhood drama, this is the Karen takedown of the year. And it was all caught on camera. Karen towed a sheriff's truck. You won't believe what happened next. You ever have one of those mornings that starts out peaceful? Birds chirping, coffee in hand, nothing but calm vibes. And then out of nowhere, boom, screaming. That was me, Saturday morning. I had just stepped onto my front porch with a fresh cup of coffee, ready to enjoy a quiet weekend. My neighbor across the street, Mr. Daniels, was watering his lawn. A couple kids were riding their bikes. It was the definition of small-town peace. But then I heard it. This is illegal. At first, I thought maybe someone was getting robbed or a dog had been hit by a car. The kind of scream that makes your stomach drop. I turned my head and saw her, Karen. Yes, that's actually her name. And yes, she's exactly what you imagine when you hear it. Mid-50s, blonde bob haircut, designer sunglasses even when it's cloudy. Lives at the corner house with the perfectly trimmed hedges and the 14-turn no trespassing signs. She once reported my mailbox for being too colorful. Now here she was, standing on her driveway in full meltdown mode, pointing at a truck parked along the curb like it had personally insulted her. The truck, a white Ford F-250 with government tags and a sheriff's department logo on the side, clearly marked, not blocking any driveways, just parked like a normal vehicle. But Karen? Oh no, she wasn't having it. Whoever this is, you're trespassing. This is my neighborhood. She paced in circles, one hand flailing, the other holding her phone like it was a sword. I could actually hear her muttering, "Not in my town," as she walked up to the truck and started inspecting it. Like she was conducting a crime scene investigation, she took pictures, front, back, side, license plate. Then she whipped around and started knocking, no, banging, on her neighbor's door. The new guy who had just moved in 2 weeks ago. A quiet, polite guy. Didn't party, didn't cause trouble. Turned out he was the sheriff's cousin. But Karen didn't know that yet. By now, neighbors had started gathering. People peeked out of windows. One guy across the street pulled out his phone and started recording, because let's be honest, when Karen acts up, it's content. Then the front door opened, and who steps out? The sheriff himself. Full uniform, badge, calm as can be. Karen didn't even blink. "You need to move this truck now," she screamed in his face, standing just inches from his chest. The sheriff raised an eyebrow. "Good morning to you too, ma'am," he said, cool as ice. "Is there a problem?" Karen puffed up like a rooster. "Yes. You're parked illegally. This is a residential neighborhood. Only residents and guests can park here. You are neither." Now keep in mind, the sheriff wasn't parked in front of her house. He wasn't blocking her driveway. He was a full car length away from any property line. And again, official vehicle, badge, on duty. He explained this calmly. "Ma'am, I'm here visiting family. I'm also currently on duty. This vehicle is a county-issued truck. I'm legally allowed to park it here." Karen crossed her arms. "I don't care if you're the president. This is my street. You're violating HOA rules. And I have every right to tow your truck." Let me just pause for a second and let that sink in. This woman threatened to tow the truck of the county sheriff while he stood in front of her wearing his badge. You could see the sheriff's face go from calm to confused. "Ma'am," he said slowly, "I'm trying to be respectful here. But what you're suggesting is not only incorrect, it's a very serious mistake." But Karen was already dialing her phone. "You'll be sorry," she shouted. "I'm calling the tow company right now." And she did. Let's back up a little, because there's some context here that really makes this story even more wild. The sheriff, whose name is James Carter, is not just some officer with a badge. He's the elected county sheriff, a respected man with over 25 years of service. A local, grew up in the area. Everyone knows him, and those who don't know him personally know of him. He's known for being level-headed, honest, and calm under pressure. The kind of guy who de-escalates fights with words, not force. And the house he was visiting? That belongs to his younger cousin, Derek. a quiet guy who had just moved to town with his wife and newborn baby. They bought the house 2 weeks ago, trying to settle into a peaceful life away from the city. Sheriff Carter stopped by to help them set up a security system. You know, family helping family. He had parked along the curb, walked up the driveway and gone inside. He had barely been there 10 minutes before the screaming began. Now, Sheriff Carter could have ignored Karen. He could have flashed his badge, waved her off, and gone back inside. But he didn't. He stood there, calmly, trying to reason with her, explaining the law, trying to be professional. He didn't raise his voice, didn't threaten her. He even pulled out a pamphlet, yes, an actual pamphlet, from the department explaining vehicle codes for government and emergency vehicles. It stated in plain English that marked sheriff vehicles can park in residential zones while on duty or official visit. Karen didn't care. "This isn't an emergency," she shouted. "You're lying. I know my rights." At this point, a small crowd had formed. A few of us stood on our lawns, some with phones recording. One guy shouted, "Karen, he's the actual sheriff," but she ignored us all. The phone call was already made. She had called Big Al's Towing, the local tow company, and insisted that an unauthorized vehicle was trespassing and needed to be removed immediately. The sheriff looked stunned. "Ma'am, you're towing a county vehicle. That could be considered interfering with the law enforcement property," he said slowly. "Do you really want to go down that road?" Karen didn't even flinch. "You're trying to scare me, but I know my rights. You're not above the law." Now, let me make something very clear. Even if the sheriff had been off duty, there was no law or HOA rule that prevented any vehicle from parking where his truck was parked. It wasn't private property. There were no signs, no painted curbs, no obstructions. This was 100% about Karen flexing imaginary authority. And she was committed. About 15 minutes later, you could hear the rumble of a diesel engine. The tow truck had arrived. That's when Sheriff Carter stepped back and said the most legendary line of the day. "All right then. If she's really going to do this, I'll let her." The man was calm, collected, almost amused. He stepped to the side, pulled out his phone and made one call. Just one. Karen, meanwhile, was practically vibrating with power. She met the tow truck driver at the curb, pointing at the sheriff's truck like she was leading a military operation. The driver stepped out, looked at the truck, then back at Karen. This is a sheriff's truck." "I know," Karen snapped. "It's unauthorized. I already reported it. Tow it." The driver hesitated. "You got documentation?" Karen pulled out a manila folder. Yes, an actual folder, with printed out screenshots from the HOA rules, maps of the neighborhood, and what looked like a handwritten complaint form she made herself. The driver shrugged. Maybe he didn't want to argue. Maybe he didn't recognize Sheriff Carter. But he started hooking up the front of the truck. And the sheriff? He stood there silently, smiling, because the cavalry was on its way. You would think by now someone would have stepped in. Someone would have convinced Karen to back off. But no, Karen was doubling down like she was the judge, jury, and sheriff herself. So there we were, the tow truck driver, big guy, maybe in his 40s, beard down to his chest, wearing a faded Big Al's Towing shirt, was kneeling in front of the sheriff's truck, securing the tow hooks under the front axle. His movements were slow, hesitant. He kept glancing at the sheriff like he was waiting for him to say, "All right, stop." But the sheriff never did. He just stood there with his arms folded, watching silently. He looked more curious than angry, like he was waiting to see just how far this woman was willing to go. Karen, on the other hand, was buzzing with excitement. She was practically skipping around the tow truck, waving her phone, taking photos of every angle, and saying things like, "This is what happens when you think the law doesn't apply to you," and "I know people at City Hall, he's done." The tow truck driver gave one last look at the sheriff and said, "Sir, last chance. You want me to stop?" Sheriff Carter responded calmly, "Nope, go ahead." That's when I knew. This man was playing the long game. The front wheels of the sheriff's truck lifted slowly off the ground. The sound of metal grinding against the winch echoed through the neighborhood. You could feel the tension in the air shift from awkward to downright historic. Everyone watching, neighbors, kids on bikes, even the guy across the street who had been grilling, froze. You don't just see a sheriff's truck getting towed every day, especially not by a random HOA Karen. As the driver finished chaining the wheels, a second tow truck pulled up behind him, this one clearly belonging to the city's impound division. That's when things started getting weird. Karen stormed over to the second truck, waving her hands. "What is this? I didn't call you. I already got one," she barked. But the man inside didn't get out. Instead, he leaned out the window and said, "I'm not here for your call, lady." Karen blinked. "Then who called you?" From the side, we all heard the sound of police radios. 3 more squad cars rolled up to the scene. Flashing lights. Doors opened. Out stepped uniformed deputies, not in a rush, just calm, collected, and walking with purpose. One of them had a clipboard, another had a body cam already recording, and leading them, a captain from the sheriff's department. The crowd murmured, a few gasps. One neighbor muttered, "Oh, she's done." Karen, still unaware of what was about to happen, raised her phone like a sword again. "Good, I called you people. That truck needs to be towed." The captain didn't even acknowledge her at first. He walked straight up to Sheriff Carter, nodded and said, "We got your call, sir. Everything under control?" Carter smiled. "Oh yeah, just giving her all the rope she needs." The captain turned to the tow truck driver. "Step away from the vehicle, sir. You're not authorized to tow a government-issued unit." The driver, wide-eyed, unhooked the chains so fast you'd think the truck was on fire. He backed up with his hands up, mumbling something about not knowing it was official business. Karen, now realizing things were slipping out of her control, tried to insert herself. Wait, I have authority here. That vehicle was parked illegally in a residential zone. I followed procedure. I cited the HOA codes. It's right here." She pulled out her manila folder again, waving it like a badge. The captain looked at her and said, "Ma'am, this vehicle is not only legally parked, it's a designated emergency vehicle. Sheriff Carter is on duty. Interfering with the operation of that vehicle or misrepresenting your authority to have it removed could carry serious criminal penalties." Karen's face paled. You could practically see the blood drain from her cheeks. "But I didn't know. I thought—" The clipboard deputy stepped forward. "Ma'am, did you inform the tow company that this vehicle was abandoned?" "Yes," she blurted, then stopped, realized her mistake. "Let me rephrase," the deputy said. "Did you tell the tow company this truck was not affiliated with law enforcement?" Karen opened her mouth, closed it, tried again. "I didn't say that exactly. You misrepresented the vehicle's status to a commercial service and initiated an unauthorized tow of a government unit. That's a misuse of emergency services, possibly fraud." Now she was visibly shaking. I thought I was doing the right thing." The sheriff, for the first time, spoke up again. "Ma'am, I warned you, more than once." Then he turned to his cousin's porch and said, "Derek, bring out the video." And Derek, quiet, tech-savvy Derek, walked out holding a Nest doorbell camera feed on his tablet. Crystal clear audio. Every word Karen said, every threat, every false claim. And it was all recorded. Karen tried to regain control of the situation, but it was already out of her hands. What was once a simple tantrum over a parked truck had turned into a full-on legal mess. And the worst part, it was all her doing. As Derek played the footage, the crowd watched silently. It felt like a courtroom drama, except the defendant was standing on her own driveway, stammering like a malfunctioning robot. I didn't mean to file a false report," she said. The deputy with the body cam stepped closer. "Ma'am, you claimed the vehicle was unauthorized and obstructing private property. It was not. You called a private towing service under false pretenses. That's not a mistake. That's a misrepresentation of authority." Karen turned to the sheriff. "Can't we just, let this go?" Let this go. The man whose vehicle she tried to tow, the sheriff she berated in public, just smiled. "I could," he said, "but you didn't give me the same courtesy, did you?" Karen's mouth opened, but no words came out. "I tried to explain. I gave you warnings. I even gave you printed laws," he continued, "but you wanted to be in charge. And now you're going to learn what happens when you abuse that." With that, the sheriff nodded at his captain. The deputy with the clipboard stepped forward. "Ma'am, at this time, you're being issued a citation for misuse of emergency resources and interference with a government vehicle. Depending on the county's decision, further charges may be filed." Karen's reaction? Full meltdown. "This is harassment. I have rights. I'm calling my lawyer," she shouted. The captain calmly responded, "Ma'am, we encourage you to do so." One of the officers began writing out the citation while another collected Karen's information. She kept ranting, but now it was just noise. No one was listening, not even the neighbors, because now the neighbors, we, were laughing. Quietly, respectfully, but definitely laughing. After years of dealing with Karen's HOA tirades, her dog poop complaints, her rants about lawn height and fence color, this was justice. Real, poetic justice. And it didn't stop there. Remember that guy recording everything from his lawn chair? Yeah, he uploaded the full video, unedited, to TikTok that same night. Within hours, it had 600,000 views. By the next morning, it hit 3.5 million. By the end of the week, it was featured on news blogs, reaction channels, and even made it into a Karen compilation video titled Top 10 Wildest Karen Meltdowns. Number 3 got the sheriff involved. Karen became internet famous overnight, not in the way she wanted. People started driving by her house just to see if she was real. Some even took selfies near the curb where the sheriff's truck had been parked. She stopped going outside. No more HOA patrols, no more angry notes taped to people's doors. The HOA, embarrassed by the entire fiasco, actually held an emergency meeting. They voted to suspend Karen from any leadership role indefinitely. Her power trip? Over. Sheriff Carter, on the other hand, became a local legend. People started calling him the Calm Commander. He was even invited to speak at a local high school about how to handle conflict without escalating. And when asked how he kept his cool during the whole ordeal, he just smiled and said, "When someone shows you who they are, don't argue. Let them speak. Let them act. They'll tell the world everything you need to know." Mick dropped. It's been several weeks since the Tao heard round the block, and let me tell you, nothing's been the same since. Let's start with Karen. After that legendary meltdown, she disappeared from public view like a magician vanishing behind a smoke bomb. No more HOA inspections, no more passive-aggressive notes on neighbors' doorsteps, no more loud lectures about garbage bins being out too long. In fact, for almost 2 weeks, her house looked completely shut down. Curtains drawn, porch light off, lawn, usually mowed with military precision, started growing a little too long. A few weeds even popped up. Now that might not seem like a big deal, unless you know Karen. For her, a single dandelion was basically DEFCON 1. Rumor had it she tried to file a complaint with the HOA board, claiming that she was harassed by an aggressive law enforcement officer. But the board had already seen the video. Every member had a copy in their inbox, sent directly by the HOA president, who reportedly said, "We've tolerated her antics for long enough. She embarrassed the entire neighborhood." During the next HOA meeting, which, for the record, had record-breaking attendance, they voted almost unanimously to strip Karen of any authority within the HOA. No more rule enforcement, no more community newsletters, no more power. You could practically feel the breeze from the sighs of relief. Now, she's just another homeowner. One of many, and without the threat of fines or phony rules, people started pushing back. The family down the street painted their fence bright blue. The old couple on the corner planted flamingo lawn ornaments. Dozens of them. A guy even parked his beat-up RV right in front of Karen's house for a whole weekend, just to test if it was still a problem. She didn't come out once. But let's talk about the real star of the show, Sheriff James Carter. His calm, collected response to the entire situation made him a local hero. People couldn't stop talking about it. The clip of him standing silently while Karen yelled, then turning the whole thing around with one phone call, went mega viral. News outlets picked it up. One YouTube channel broke it down like it was a football play, adding slow-motion replays and commentary. He even got invited to do a sit-down interview with the local news, where he explained the whole ordeal with a chuckle. "I believe in letting people show the world who they are. No need to shout, just listen. People loved him for it. In the days that followed, Sheriff Carter was honored at the city council meeting. The mayor gave him a plaque that read, "For upholding the law with grace under fire," and under that, a little engraving that said, "Don't tow the sheriff. You can't make this stuff up." But what really touched everyone was how the sheriff handled it afterward. No gloating, no revenge, no press charges against Karen, even though he legally could have. According to county law, what Karen did was technically a misuse of emergency resources and attempted interference with law enforcement property. He could have pushed for real consequences. But instead, he chose the high road. He accepted the citation against Karen as enough, left the final decision to the HOA, and walked away. Like a true professional. But not everyone was so forgiving. Big Al's Towing, the company Karen had dragged into her mess, wasn't thrilled either. They released a public statement saying they regretted participating in the unauthorized tow and had fired the driver involved pending retraining. They even offered a free vehicle recovery service to the sheriff's department for 1 year as a gesture of goodwill. Meanwhile, the internet was having a field day. Karen quickly became the face of HOA abuse online. Memes popped up left and right. My personal favorite? A cartoon of Karen holding a giant red phone that said "Tow Time," with the caption, "When you call the tow truck on the law." She was numbered 3 on a list titled Top 10 Karens Who Got Served Hard. Even the sheriff's department got in on the fun, in a classy way. They released a PSA titled Know Your Rights and Know the Law. It featured Sheriff Carter explaining parking ordinances, HOA limitations, and how to peacefully resolve disputes. The video opened with a tongue-in-cheek line, "Before you call a tow truck on a sheriff's vehicle, maybe just don't." And guess what? That video got hundreds of thousands of views. High schools invited Carter to speak on conflict resolution. One PTA group wanted him to host a seminar. Kids at the local middle school even made shirts with his face on them that said, "The Calm Commander." But perhaps the most unexpected ripple effect was what happened in our neighborhood itself. For the first time in years, people were talking to each other again. And not just to complain. We hosted a community barbecue. People shared stories about their past run-ins with Karen, like the time she tried to fine someone for having Halloween decorations too scary, or when she wrote up a kid for riding his skateboard too loud. It was like therapy. Group healing. The sense of fear was gone. The passive aggression, gone. We laughed, we bonded, we even created a neighborhood group chat. And guess who's not in it? Yep, Karen. The new HOA president made it clear. This community isn't about control, it's about respect. Derek, the sheriff's cousin, said it best at the barbecue. Funny how one ridiculous day brought us all together. And he's right. All it took was a woman who thought she could tow the sheriff to wake us all up and realize we weren't living in a neighborhood. We were living in her domain. But not anymore. Now we wave to each other. We share tools. We watch each other's pets. Because the shadow of HOA tyranny, it's gone, thanks to one sheriff, a tow truck, and a Karen who flew too close to the legal sun. So if you ever think you're having a rough day, just remember, at least you didn't try to tow the county sheriff's truck. And just like that, the sheriff didn't have to say much. He let Karen destroy her own reputation, one tow hook at a time. What do you think? Did Karen get what she deserved, or did she tow herself straight into a lesson she'll never forget? If you enjoyed this wild ride, hit that like button, drop a comment with your favorite part, and don't forget to subscribe for more real-life stories that are stranger than fiction. You don't want to miss what's coming next.